Now here's the next one refers to the picture here. Has anybody ever made a turkey trap? Or what was sometimes called a turkey pen? Well, you're looking at one there. That was a 19th century turkey trap or turkey pen that actually caught turkeys. Does anybody know how it worked? It's hard to tell there how the thing works. You can see this one turkey peeking out like, uh-oh. You guys might as well just leave. I'm in for it. It's close to Thanksgiving. But have you ever used a minnow trap? Some of you have used a minnow trap. You know.
Place where the turkey can get into easily. You got some kind of bait in there, and you just can't figure out how to get out.
That's right. It works on the same concept as a minnow trap. You bait them in, and you've got an obvious way in. And then you rely on basically the stupidity of the animal to not be able to find their way out. So what they would do, making these turkey pens or turkey traps, they would build this well, first of all, they would dig a trench, 10 or 15 feet long trench, a couple feet deep in the ground, and they would have it sort of angling down and then angling back up. And over one end of the trench, they would build this little pen, using logs. If you're dealing with a turkey, it's not like they're going to throw them off. You just kind of stack them on top of each other, put a heavy log or two on top to sort of weight down the whole contraption, keep it from falling apart. And the idea is you scatter corn or something through this trench, and the idea is that the turkey is too busy pecking at the corn and just follows it up underneath this pen, and the opening is going to be in the middle of the pen somewhere. And first thing the turkey knows, she or he is in the middle of this wooden cage here. And how are they going to try to get out? They're going to go to the edge and look out where they can actually see daylight through these logs, and all they'll do is just go around and around the edge, around the cage, and will never think to go back to the middle and retrace their steps and go out the trench. Similar to a minnow trap, the minnows go in and then they just kind of hang around the edges and never, there's a little circle about like that they could swim back out, but they rarely ever do it. They're too busy trying to get out the sides. And so that's obviously what this turkey's doing. But this was used by many people on the Ozarks Frontier, and in some cases probably into the late 1800s, early 1900s. It was a way, especially if lead was in short supply, or if you were like me and you were a terrible shot. This is probably a much surer way of landing a turkey, is just build one of these little pens. You could also use these for catching wolves. Obviously, you would need a sturdier pen for that, and you would want a gun to finish it off once you came up and it's in there. And I've even read about people building bear pens. And you would want a really sturdy pen in that case, but apparently bears and wolves both as well would just kind of circle around, just walk circles around the edges of the pen there, the cage, and wouldn't go back out the middle. You'd have to build a bigger trench for them to get into, but the same concept again applied. And bear traps, bear hunting was such a common thing on the Ozarks Frontier that I wouldn't doubt if people did have a lot of these bear pens, because you read about any early Ozark settler and half of what they talk about is bear hunting. There were so many bears, and it was such a common activity. They're big animals. Even a bad shot can probably hit a bear, from not too far away. And it was kind of for a lot of bear hunters, it was a sort of manly activity, bear hunting, that kind of thing. Not exactly squirrel hunting. You're hunting something that could kill you or may kill your dogs. that sort of thing. And bear meat was highly prized. People on the Ozarks Frontier loved bear meat. You can read all kinds of accounts of them eating bear meat. Bear oil or bear grease, rendered from bear fat, was sold, and it was valuable. Today, there's a little bitty, tiny community just outside of the Ozarks on the lower White River in Arkansas called Oil Trough. And the town gets its name from troughs that were made, these homemade troughs, kind of like the sugar trough the guy made, but they were for bear oil. Bear hunters would make these. And the troughs, it was said that the troughs, many of them during floods or during high waters, that would get swept down the White River and kind of wash out in the flatlands of the delta where this town Oil Trough is today. And so bears were very important. Tanneries, obviously, tanneries are setups for tanning hides. And this was something that, again, most communities in the rural Ozarks, certainly by the time of the Civil War, would have at least one tannery. And sometimes, like blacksmiths, tanners were full-time tanners, or that was their main occupation. They may farm on the side. And they could tan pretty much any kind of hide. Deer hides, cow hides obviously were commonly tanned. But I even came across this was a really neat, this was an old doctor's ledger from the late 1800s. It was from Northwest Arkansas. And this doctor had in the back of his ledger, the ledger actually kept up with his patients and what he had prescribed for them and what was wrong with them and how much money he had charged them. What do you think in 1865 a house call and a little bit of medicine cost? Even cheaper than that. Now this was Arkansas, so I'm not sure. And this guy may or may not have been a real doctor. You know, he could have just said, "I'm a doctor," and who knows? You know, medical schools weren't what they are now back in those days. $2.50. He charged $2.50 for a house call and a little bit of medicine. So, you know, I'd take that today. Wouldn't you take? But anyway, in the back of this ledger, he had this extended. He was also a tanner. You got to wonder about a doctor who's tanning hides on the side. I think I've seen that movie before, real late at night. But he had these detailed instructions. I've got copies of it. These detailed instructions for how to tan all kinds of hides. I mean, sheep hides, squirrel hides, deer hides, cow hides, and to get them different colors, different styles, all that kind of stuff. But it was very detailed with all the chemicals that you needed. Of course, the early tanners would get the chemicals from a lot of times from bark. Tannin actually comes from an old German word that meant oak or fir, or it meant some kind of like tree sort of thing. Tannenbaum, the O Tannenbaum, the German. We call it Christmas tree. Yeah, that's same root sort of thing there. But these tanneries became very important and very common on the Ozarks Frontier. And a lot of people just had the knowledge to do basic tanning at home. Although tanning it's an extended process that lasts over several days. If you're actually going to tan something the way you're supposed to tan it. In his description, some of this stuff would take more than a week to do what you needed to do to go through all the stages of soaking this, and then adding the chemicals, and it soaks 18 hours in this, and that sort of thing. But tanning was very important and was an important skill and industry in the Ozarks. And then the last thing, the saltpeter industry, or using saltpeter. What was saltpeter most commonly used for in those days? Right, for producing gunpowder. Obviously a very important thing for people in a place like the rural Ozarks in the 19th century. You need gunpowder. And so Saltpeter was something that was found widely in caves in the Ozarks, and you had a lot of, in the earliest days of settlement in the Ozarks, you had a lot of saltpeter mining operations and gunpowder production operations. And again, it was something that could be mined and used and produced in the region. And now there weren't too many people making a living as producing gunpowder or mining saltpeter or anything like that, but it was, again, something that was widely available around the region, and a lot of people got into this business or into this.